Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode at the Warehouse Underground podcast series. This is episode number 13. I'm Ben, the host of the show, and with me today is Paul Lukehart. He is the founder and principal consultant at PL Programs LLC. So they are in the business of helping warehouse operational leaders manage their big, complex projects. Now, I'm not talking about just running operations and how to manage a floor better or things like that, although he's certainly capable of helping in that with his background. I'm talking about multi-layered complex projects. And if you have ever taken part in one of these, or if you haven't, they're very complicated, very complex. There are many levers to pull, and there's a lot on the line. So if you follow him on LinkedIn, you know that he has a wealth of knowledge in all things warehousing and distribution. If you don't follow him, you certainly should, because there is a lot of benefit there and a lot of good things. I'm really excited to have him on the show and kind of chat with him about PL programs, but also about some of the other things that he's done and taken part of. I think you guys will really like it. All right. So with that, I will go ahead and bring him on the stage. Paul, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the Warehouse Underground.
Oh, hey, Ben. Thanks for having me here. And I'm doing great. I'm highly caffeinated. I'm motivated, and I'm excited about the program you've got going on. And also, by the way, thank you for your work with the on the veteran side too, and putting together and doing the organizing you do. I just think that's really admirable. So appreciate that.
Yep. So we should get it out there. We're both vets. I'm sure that will come up later in the show, but that's not why I wanted to have you on. It just happened to be that case. We have that same background. So, but thank you for coming on. So before we get too deep into the technical or the meat and potatoes of the show, just tell the audience a little bit about you, who you are, your background, kind of how you came to be where you are today, and a little bit about the history of PL programs and kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of the background is in intralogistics and warehousing and distribution operations. So as you mentioned, I was in the Army for a few years. When I got out, I didn't know really what I was going to do, and I was pulled into Target Distribution Center 0593 out in Shafter, California, for my first supervisor job. So I worked with Target for a bit, and then I went to work with Amazon as an operations manager in inventory control and quality assurance out in Reno, Nevada. From Amazon, I went to a third-party logistics provider, cold chain rail transportation provider that shipped produce from the West Coast to East Coast called RailX. So I got some multimodal experience with them and a smaller company. Worked with the Allen Company out of Broomfield, Colorado, doing some light manufacturing and distribution to big retailers. And then I went to XPO Logistics, where I worked in their project implementation section. And the work there was really bringing together, working with the client representatives and then all the XPO departments, the construction and the facilities, the IT teams, bringing together all the parts of these projects for big client implementations, including notably a big Nike return center. So after working with XPO more in operations roles, then I left on my own to buy a company, not successful. So I went into independent consulting to find something to do. And I managed to get a client doing almost exactly what I did with XPO, which was a large scale automated warehouse implementation. It was a beverage company, their first North American distribution center. And their project team did just a bang up job bringing their ops to the US. And I did apparently a decent job as their project manager and program manager and integrating all their work. So they said, hey, Paul, why don't you stick around and help us with these other follow-on projects and other sites, some automation. Yeah. It turned into a lot. So I ended up hiring a junior project consultant who's doing a great job. And also picking up some work with the beverage client's manufacturer, some additional work kind of across the street, if you will, with someone up their supply chain. So I ended up hiring another consultant to help with that. And so it's been kind of an organic growth since about 2020 in these facility startups and automation implementations and some periodic site optimization and move type projects. So really, really small shop boutique. And that's kind of how we got where we are today.
Yeah, I got you. Now I have a lot of younger junior managers in the fulfillment and distribution space that follow me. And sometimes they'll reach out to me and they're always kind of talking about what is outside of just running my shift, like what is outside of the four walls, and what type of other things are in the future of the industry. And you don't really get exposed to those sometimes when you're there. And so that's why it's really cool to have people like you on the show to kind of give that perspective. And so you talk a little bit about like what are the types of uh projects that you work on? Like what's the size of them? What's the scope? Give us a little bit of a flavor of kind of what a project might look like for some of your historical clients.
Sure, absolutely. If I can move back just a step though, you mentioned the readers, or not the readers, the listeners, excuse me, your audience, saying, hey, what is an industry besides just the four walls? I talked,
Yeah.
had a book on warehouse supervision, and in the course of that, I got the opportunity to speak to some Auburn classes at Auburn's business school, and some
Very cool.
for undergrads. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was being able to say, you should look across industry for things that aren't just straight operations. There's all sorts of interesting consulting roles where you learn about supply chain, like the top to bottom supply chain and logistics, and you can go into work for integrators that are doing these high tech automation solutions.
Yep.
And you can work in all sorts of places in industry. So there's a ton out there to interesting stuff to do. But you had a question about like, hey, what type of projects do you guys do? Just as an example, when I think about a project, like an ideal or a perfect project, I think about some of these large distribution center startups, complex ones, automated, maybe part of a transformation initiative, and something requiring integration of a lot of different moving pieces in the client's organization. So I think earlier mentioning what was going on with XPO, that really happens across a lot of organizations where you need to bring in stakeholders all over. You need the buy-in of the IT organization, the operations, the engineering, the human resources, and the hiring and the recruiting and training and the safety and the sustainability and your tax and your finance teams, and everybody has to be on the same page for these to be successful. So those are the elements of the projects that we help clients navigate, and they may not have the people on hand to integrate all their folks to make those successful. So that's where we come in and help. Historically, the kind of the flagship project again was that beverage client's first North American distribution center. And we're talking probably about three-quarter of a million square foot, and highly automated with a bunch of pallet moving, laser guided vehicles through the facility. And from that was really kind of the core functionality of the facility was pallet in, pallet out. And then since then, they've added some layer picking capability, robotics, and they're moving on to automated truck loading. And so there's some other functionality that we've been able to help them specify and coordinate and bring in to get the facility started, which was a greenfield construction project. They'd never done this before. Their IT organization hadn't done it before. So helping them figure out the data and then bring all the pieces together and keep their executive stakeholders happy and informed along the way.
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Along the way, so that turns into several different, mini projects. These distribution centers can be pretty large. You can start one in 6 months, or 90 days. XPO, we used to say 90 days and you'll get a new DC, or they can take 18 months or 2 years or 3 years. If you're building these from the ground up, and they take a lot of preparation. So bringing that, doing the planning, making sure you have the right information, and making sure you're methodical and really mitigating risk is our big focus of these things.
Yeah. Now, I earlier in my career, I was kind of thrust into a project like this greenfield site, moving into a site. We ended up working with Bastion Solutions, like free plug for Bastion Solutions here. But I remember thinking, well, I thought I was pretty competent. I thought I knew a lot of things, but I was just in over my head. I mean, I was a very competent ops manager and director in the whole thing, but this is just a different world. And so, and now there's so many more options out there. You know what I mean? Just with automation and technology and all these different levels. So how do you go about kind of guiding your clients to what ultimately will be the right answer for them, with so many different ways that they can go, and with so much different technical warehouse stuff that's going on out there. How do you steer that ship and kind of get them out of the rough waters in the storm and into smooth sailing where they want to go on the back end?
Sure. And I'm not going to pretend that I know every bit of cutting edge automation out there, but I think in those projects, when you talk about steering through, troubled waters and ending up in a happy place or smooth sailing, you really focus on the fundamentals in these projects. You start with, do we understand the core requirements we're trying to satisfy? Do we have volumes and forecasts that we know we have to meet, that everybody's aligned on? Are we mitigating the risk? Are we sufficiently flexible in our expectations?
Yep.
When you look at from a program management point of view, you look at large projects like billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar projects, and tremendous amounts of them fail. 40% of them are 25% over on budget or schedule or things like that. And some of the big commonalities behind those failures are, did they get the basic data for their design right? So in our case, that's product characteristics, and that's volumes, and that's our business requirements and things like that. And then the other big risk factor is really an integrated team. So do you have all the right skill sets on your team to bring the right perspectives in and work together and be coordinated to make this successful? Bringing that back to a warehouse design or a distribution center design, you need to have a good starting place for what are we designing for, and then you need to have the right people to execute that. So do you have the engineers? Do you have your facility contractors? Do you have your consultants? Do you have your business analysts to come up with your right design parameters? And then from then you can pick the technology, and do a little research and find a lot, either through integrators or direct. If you're feeling adventurous, you do your own integration. So to answer your question, I think it's less about the specific technology or the specific vendor for a given situation. It's more about really understanding the situation that the client is trying to solve for.
Yeah. And do you find that the clients come to you with a very good idea of how they want their warehouse or their distribution center to operate? Because I ask that because sometimes, like, there's many different ways that you can design a facility. Do you want it to house as much product as it possibly can? Okay, well, we'll design it one way. Do you want it to be the fastest amount of throughput that you can possibly achieve? Capacity be damned, right type thing. And those are two very different ends of the spectrum. So, right, do clients kind of know, or do they just kind of say, we want it to do everything, Paul? Like, we want it to be good. We want it to look good. We want it to be awesome. And then you have to say, well, wait a minute. What is this? Am I on an off-roading vehicle here? Am I trying to design one to race down the road? Like, what do you have to coach clients through that? Or, I mean, are you finding that they already come to you with a good idea specifically of what they want it to do and accomplish for their business?
I think there's a spectrum of there's several spectrums, several axes, if you will, that you have to consider. You have to think about the sophistication of the client, like how, organizationally, have they done this type of thing before? Is it a new technology? Is it a new type of operation? And then you can start thinking about what they want to invest in it, and when they need results, when they need something stood up. So a lot will fall out from, a lot of their vision will fall out from those things. How much do they know what they want? And how long do they want it, and how much are they willing to spend? So if they're not very sophisticated, then yes, we would provide more of a, hey, you may want to think about doing this type of thing, or talk to these people on the design engineers, or did you think about, you're planning for this year's volume. Did you think about your growth forecast for 10 years, or your storage requirements, or how your SKU profiles are going to change, things like that. So this is a big, it depends to your question, which is often the case. But it's interesting because you may have expertise in a client in one area. For example, maybe the organization is exceptionally good at, like, marketing and branding, but they haven't run a distribution center before. They're figuring it
Yeah.
out. So then you have to really rely on them for the vision of the business and maybe not the details of the operation. So in a
Yeah.
case like that, you have to say, okay, you guys have task relevant competency over here, but maybe not on how this pick area should look. So why don't we provide some more guidance and some more shape for you there, and you provide the more of the requirements. And if you have somebody who's been doing it a long time, like Amazon knows a heck of a lot more than I do about how their pick areas should look. So at that point, maybe it's more the governance and making sure the teams are connected.
Yeah. Now you mentioned this earlier. You were talking about this, and I know this from firsthand experience. When you take on a project of this magnitude inside a company or organization, you quickly find out that there are many, many people who have sort of skin in the game. There's many stakeholders. There's many different decision makers, whether it's the IT person or the COO or marketing or the warehouse manager or the maintenance person or whatever. Like what has been your key to success to get all those people rowing the same boat and the same way? Because in my experience, that can quickly torpedo a project if you've got all these different opinions, but there can only be one facility. It's going to be one facility that ultimately that operates one way, no matter what everybody's different opinion is. But a lot of people will have different opinions and they want this for their area and this for their area. How do you do that? I mean, what's the magic? What's the secret sauce to get everybody in line? Is it just your experience? Is just it communication? I mean, is it the meetings, the structure of these set up? How do you go about that? Because I know there's many people that pull you in a lot of different ways when you come in for something like this.
Yeah, that can be really challenging. That's another one of those risk factors in project failures, which is that you don't get decisions, or you have stakeholders that are opposed to some part of the project for some reason. They're not, like you said, they're not all rowing in the same direction. So it's at that point, it's maybe less about what technical solution is the best and more about the alignment of everybody. So you have to make sure that you've kind of identified everybody who should be engaged in the project and that you have a plan to engage them, which sounds really simple, but if, like you said, maintenance is a great example. Like if you're doing a site design, you're not consulting or engaging the folks responsible for the maintenance on the size of the maintenance area, what equipment has to be in it, what are their requirements. You're gonna have problems later. So what's the secret? It's perceiving maybe who needs to be involved, and then having a communications plan and strategy for engaging them. And then how do you get people like aligned or at least to a consensus? I'm not sure I know how to articulate that precisely. You can do like decision matrices, and you can say, oh, you're going to make the final decision and you're the approver and things like that. But a lot of times you have to meet the organizational hierarchy, and then you have to kind of work around it. The whole, Nimawashi, like the soft engagement. Offline sometimes to make sure nobody's surprised and everybody thinks about everything and do it, which is an underrated but essential part of these programs. I think everybody focuses on the robotics and the throughputs, and the material flow diagrams, very important. But if your team's not aligned, like you said, you're going to fail. If you go up to your executives with a new plan or a new budget request or something, and they're not on board, it's going to be very difficult for everybody.
Yeah, and sometimes people will, like using maintenance as an example, you bypass them or you don't involve them, and then they just cross their arms. Nobody talked to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do this type thing, and then they're not bought in, right? They're not. You don't have a consensus, and they're not part of it, and so I think you're right. It's sort of a soft skill, just that engagement and that people understanding, but it does play a big role in projects like this. And that's what people will remember. Hey, working with Paul was a dream. He was very easy to work with. Everybody got, and so I think that's just, in my experience, that is a part of it. I don't think it's as big of a part of it as the technical side of it. I mean, that's where you're going to get the savings and the efficiency and the output and everything. But yeah, I would think that in this world with teams, that's just certainly becomes a part of it.
Everybody hates
So
to be surprised, right? So you have your project team meetings, and you have your various work stream meetings, and we knock meetings a lot, but they are a vehicle of how this work gets done. Especially across functions. If your construction guys aren't talking to the automation guys or the IT people, it's just cooperation and communication are really the linchpins of success there.
yeah.
So
Now let me ask you this. So shifting gears a little bit, on
Mhm.
your website, which I looked at, there is a story on there that, and I can't believe this happened. I can't believe it's true. It gives me nightmares just thinking about it. And that you had a sorter burst into flames at 2 a.m. at one of your facilities. First of all, is that true?
Yeah, it was
What did you?
a sorter cabinet. It was at the Nike returns facility that XPO was running. I think the statute of limitations or whatever on my NDA is expired, so I think we're okay.
Okay. You don't. We can cut
But
the tape. You
no,
want
no,
me
no.
to?
There's a happy ending. There's a happy ending. Which was, so this cabinet burst into flames. You notice the smoke, you notice the flames. Somebody says, "Hey, Paul, what's going on?" I was a director of ops, and I was there at night because we were in like a peak season or some busy period. I don't know if it was peak or if it was like the end of Q2. I forget. But in any case, busy time. And this. So what do? You go and you cut the power to the cabinet, and
Yeah.
you run some fire drills on it. And then what do? You have to then you kind of go into what do we do now mode, which is you find your alternate processes to keep production moving as best you can past the sorter. If you can, you use your pack stations to do sortation or queue up orders if you can't process them. And then you start figuring out how do we get the sorter back online. And then in that case, it turned out to be, we found out that the particular component that had gone out and fried was like the one part of that cabinet that wasn't in the spare parts. Of course, that's how it's going to happen. So you end up ordering start calling suppliers at two in the morning, looking for these parts, and one actually picked up, and so we were able to get
Perfect.
down like 8 or 10 a.m. in the next day from Chicago.
Yeah.
So happy ending, but it was the craziest things happen. Like if you're in the industry, you see all sorts of crazy things happen. Like there's a very long tail of events that you understand can happen, and that leads to a conservative mindset. And I think that's one of the things we bring to this project too, is in planning. Say, your spare parts list. Okay, is it there? Did you get it quoted? What's in it? What are the critical parts? What are the lead times? How can you get them there? Because this stuff's going to happen, and you have to prep the clients to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that is a great. I mean, we've sort of talked about this on LinkedIn, me and you back and forth about the importance of considering contingencies. And if you don't think about the contingencies, or you're not someone who is familiar enough with the industry to be able to troubleshoot when the contingencies arise, you can be in a lot of trouble very fast. So you're right. You mentioned that, like, hey, I'm familiar with the industry. I'm familiar with all these nuts and bolts, all these components. So therefore, I can respond very quickly to a contingency that happens versus your in-house team, or just they're just not gonna have that,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a false sense of security to just lay out a project plan, I think, and say, wow, no, this is what the project's going to be. It's not going to be that. It's going to change, and it's going to modify, and you need to be able to think on your feet and create a new plan. What it looks like in the end, I don't think is going to match exactly how you laid it out in the beginning, but that's where I think PL programs and people like you can kind of come in and give those clients some security, right, and some peace of mind, knowing that it's in good hands, right?
Yeah,
So
I think that's it. If you've been down the road a couple times, where a lot more of the potholes are or could be, and so you can keep people from running into those. Or if they do happen, you say, oh, okay, well, we thought this might happen, so here's the risk mitigation plan. Like, oh, geez, this is going to be late. The site circuit's going to be late. Okay, we're going to get temporary internet in so we can continue our testing on schedule, or here's how we're going to phase the testing or the implementation plan so that it works, or let's make sure we have these dependencies, these resources lined up to do all these things you need, because we've seen this fail before, and we're not going to let you fail. So
Yep.
having the experience helps.
And that, I mean, we both have a military background, like, so that's the world of ops in the military is contingency after contingency. And then we kind of cut our teeth with Amazon when we first came out, and that's how it is there too. So I think it's both near and dear to our hearts, and that's just a reality of how ops works. And it's not only ops running a shift; it is running a project too. And sometimes people forget about that, I think. But
you have to think about you have to be, from a project point of view, you think about other contingencies. So it's not just the specific events, how are we going to do it? But, from your resourcing planning, are you keeping up in your resource plan? Do you have the budget? Do construction budgets ever run over? I don't know, maybe, like, do they? Like, often they do. So how do you plan and make sure you structure your bidding and your quoting and your estimating and contingencies so that you can do it successfully and not run over, not run short, get all the scope you planned, things like that. So it's taking it from the palette all the way up to the executive level. Like, how do you manage all those and integrate all those activities?
Yep. I love that. I think that's true to form. So let me ask you this, Paul. When a client decides to work with you, what can they expect? I mean, what are the nuts and bolts of what it's like, and kind of what are your foundational principles at PL Programs that kind of guide you through every project? I mean, what do you believe in? What's kind of your core values type thing?
Right. So I think there's a few things when we think about, like, well, we want to do the right thing. We want to get results. We want to operate with integrity, right? Like, and we want to make sure that it's a good fit for the client. So when we think about the projects, we think about, can we add value here? How can we add it? And, what can we really bring to the table? And a lot of that, I think, comes from being small and being agile, if you will. As a smaller firm, we can integrate very closely with the client team members. And so it's almost, I don't want to say totally indistinguishable, but often, it can be, we become part of the team in implementation. So, very, very deeply integrated. And that helps us bring it's no longer like I've experienced engagements with other larger consultants, and they have like a very structured plan because they have a lot more overhead. We're going to do a 10-week plan. Here are the things you're going to get out of it, and so on. And I think that's good. Having a methodology is good. It's rigorous, but you're also on their timeline. You're playing by their playbook. And I think when we engage with clients, it's more of all right, let's figure out what works for you, and let's bring you the best experience that you can within your constraints and your organization and your needs. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our philosophy on how we integrate and operate with clients.
Yeah, I got you. Now, when you're talking about the ops world, warehousing, distribution, fulfillment center, and I think this probably goes for everything out there. Why do you think that people are prone to bypassing the planning phase up front and just kind of jumping in and implementing solutions, and then it just never fails? They always have to fix them downstream on the back end, and it's because they negated that. So why do you think there's that ready, fire, aim thing that is sort of a symptom, I don't want a sickness of the warehousing industry? It just seems like everywhere you go, people are prone to that. Is that just innate to the dynamic of the industry? Is it person to person dependent? I mean, are you seeing that, or what are your thoughts on that? Because you're in the game. I mean, you're in the project, you're in the planning. Is that
yeah?
What do you think about that? Why do you think that might be? It's sort of an open-ended question, I guess.
I think there's when people are doing these projects, there's a lot of pressure to produce results quickly, and show progress quickly. And it's hard to do that when you are going through design, or you're gathering information, or you're getting quotes or things like that. If you're subject to a lot of pressure to get something up and going by Q2, and it's already mid-February, or whatever the case is, whatever your constraints are, you're going to take shortcuts. Now, just like quality issues in an operation. If you pass a quality issue downstream, you end up paying for it 10 times later. Same thing in these projects. You have to lay the groundwork and do it right up front if you don't want to pay for it downstream. So I don't know. I don't know that there's a single answer to your question. So it could be just organizational pressure, personal pressure to perform and get promoted quickly. From project owners, it could be they don't know how to do a good, like, lay the groundwork and design. So how do you coach somebody to say we need to slow down and do more, solutioning and options up front? So maybe some combination of those is what you do.
For me, I feel like it's always, because the difference in the distribution world is that it's always running, like you said. So you got to do maintenance on the car and design the car while it's running, versus some other careers, like take marketing as an example. Marketing will work on a project. They will, interact with other people on a project, get input, and then they launch it. Hey, then we're going to launch this program, or we're going to launch this initiative. But distribution's never that way. It just seems like there's never time. I mean, maybe if you're starting up a new facility, but even then, there's pressure to get it open because time is money type thing.
That's exactly it. I mean, you just hit it on the head, which is that there's this it's a very measurable financial drain to get some of these things going. What was our payback? When is it starting? When can we start sending volume there and get this out of our other warehouses? That type of dynamic, whereas maybe other functions, the results are less attributable. I don't know. That's probably not the right word, but you can't map the cost as directly to the input.
Yep. But I think too, that's where, if people know that is sort of in their nature, so like, what's the famous quote from Abraham Lincoln? If you gave me an hour to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 45 minutes sharpening my axe type thing. I'm like, yeah, that's not a thing. Abraham Lincoln was not working in a fulfillment center world, because that's too long, right? Like, we need to go. But I think that's where, I think, if I'm a CEO of a company and I know that my ops leaders are going to be prone to that type thing, it's a perfect avenue for me to say, I'm going to go with Paul and PL Programs, because they've already learned that they're familiar with that. I don't have to worry about that. And he can sort of be the guardrail for us in our operations, sort of protect us from what we might naturally do anyway. Plus, it's gonna get to completion much faster. So, I think you're in a good position to take advantage of that, I think.
Yeah, or just helping shape the business case and the possible outcomes. You might say, hey, I understand we're going to have operability problems, but the business needs us to go now. Right? Being able to look and look at the business scenarios, create the business cases or the different parts of that, and help the clients make a deliberate decision. And say, okay, you realize you're accepting these consequences by doing these things. Okay, great. All right, we're committed. Let's go after it. Right, like that type.
But it goes back to that teamwork and that communication thing that you talked about earlier, and that's why it's important to get everybody's buy-in on that point too. So absolutely. So, all right. So shifting gears here, and we talked about this before the show, before you came on, and I got a good chuckle. So so you're a published author. You've written 2 books. I have not read the books, Paul. All right. So full disclosure, I looked at the reviews of the books online. They're pretty good, but they talk to me a little bit about what that was like. Like, what was it like kind of writing a book? I know it's for warehouse leaders and that type thing, but what was it like becoming a published author? And then what's the reception been like since you published it? And then just let us know about your terrible review that you got.
Yeah, I might have to dig it up again. That's okay. That's fine. I'll do it eventually. So the cause or the start of doing, so the 2 books you're talking about, Practical Floor Supervision, which is about being a warehouse supervisor, kind of like a manual for warehouse supervisors. How do you do your job? Like, what do you need to know? That type of thing. And then there's Practical Performance Management, which is about managing hourly labor, being cost efficient and fair, and how do you set up a program to do it? How do you administer the program? Things like that. Practical floor supervision was so I worked at Target, worked at Amazon, went to RailX. RailX did not really have a training program for supervisors. I started up a facility. I hired, 5 or 10 supervisors for the shifts, and I said, oh geez, there's no training materials. What do I do? So I was looking for books online. How do I, what can I leverage to create training materials? And there was really nothing. And so what I did after I got through that situation was I said, all right, I've got some great experience with Target's programs and Amazon's programs on how to do warehouse supervision and some other things I learned. So I'm going to put that all in a book, and I'm going to write a manual for warehouse supervisors who are absolutely critical to running a good operation on how they should approach safety, how they should approach quality, how they should, different techniques and tips and mindset, and then specific tools they can use to do these things effectively in their settings. And then the productivity and team engagement and all the things you expect supervisors to do. So I wrote the book and self-published. I went to Amazon's, print on demand, the Kindle self-publishing platform, and eventually into the hard copy. But so I wrote that for myself and my organization's use, and other people have picked it up and used it. And let me tell you, the editing is not very good. Like I need an actual editor to fix the run-on sentences. That's fine.
I'm sympathetic to that. Neither's my editing.
Oh man, every time I look at it, it gets worse and worse. But it got picked up by some of the supply chain management classes at Auburn.
Yeah,
regularly.
Very cool.
And so there are a bunch of Auburn grads out there who have either read or thrown away this book, one of the two. And then other now and then the clients will find it and pick it up. And recently had one get a copy for all the supervisors and start using it as like a book club type of.
Yep.
So really cool.
I love this because, I mean, as you know, I run a website called the Warehouse Underground and with podcasts. And that's one of the big reasons why I started it, because I remember when I started in the industry in 2012, 2013, I looked for stuff like this, books and resources and network and people. And there just wasn't really that much out there. I mean, yeah, there's some general leadership books and some general warehousing books, but there just was a gap there with the real truth, the real things that you really want to know. And so I'm always excited when I come across people like you that have done that and taken part in something like that and kind of given back and created something of value that's tangible that someone can have and use and learn and get better. I love that, because I'm in that same space, right? That's kind of what I'm doing with the website and everything. And so I appreciate that, and it's putting yourself out there and putting your name onto something is a big step forward from just being a leader, right? Just being a leader and your site and that type thing. It's a big leap, putting yourself out there. So I appreciate that. I hope you sell 1 million copies of your book.
I appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words on that. And nothing is really better than, I had somebody reach out to me randomly, some gentleman named Xavier. I have no idea what he does or like where he is right now, but he was in a couple 100-foot stocking room warehouse, essentially a stockroom warehouse. And he was like, I got your book and I learned things about how to do my job. And it really made my life better. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's great. I'm glad. That's good. So, getting that type of feedback is really, I agree. It totally makes it worth it. Right. How do you bring that up?
And I mean, you're not, you didn't, I don't think you did. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think you did that to become a millionaire off selling millions of copies of that book. You probably just did it because I have this knowledge, I have this information, I might as well put it out there for other people to benefit. And I appreciate that, man. You put it out in the universe, and I like that. And you're doing that now on LinkedIn. Like I said, like this is what we're talking about here with just everything is just the tip of the iceberg, I think, of the value that you can provide for people. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So I hope more people follow you. But anyway, I guess I should buy the book now since I talked to you, because I might read it and go, I take back everything I said. This book's horrible.
You might leave me a review like the one that said, I'm counting at 0 stars. Think about how interesting being a warehouse supervisor sounds, and then think about how interesting reading a book about it sounds. Like, great. Thank you so much. Right.
I'm going to try to find that guy, Paul, and bring him on the Tiger Team, the new show that I do. I'm gonna see if I can find that guy. He sounds like a good Tiger Team
Look,
guest.
I would love to meet him. I would love to meet him. He said, "This is what I think. This is it."
He's on it.
Yeah, very genuine.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this. So we alluded to this in the beginning. We have a mildly similar background. I was Academy graduate, you're Academy graduate, we were in the military, we started out Amazon early in our careers, but now you're different. You're in a consulting firm and doing the whole thing. So what have you seen to be kind of the pros and cons and the differences of working in a very structured corporate sort of environment at an Amazon or a Target or a GXO, and then kind of getting out into more, I don't want to say freedom, because freedom's not a very good word, but more freedom of having your own business and your own firm. What have you seen to be the difference between the two, and then the pluses and minuses, I guess?
Mm-hmm. So in the more structured environments, and as much as I love to make fun of the Army being a structured environment, this is also true for the Army. But being in the big organizations, Amazon, the Army, they have a lot of institutional know-how and resources and tools. So you can learn a lot in those environments if you keep your eyes open and you engage the right people and you say, "Oh, why are they doing it that way?" And then you discover some first principles, and then wow, you're so much better at what you do. Mm. So the ability or the options for learning are very wide in those organizations. You're constrained by some organizational structure and where are you and what do people tell you to do. But there's really tremendous opportunity to to develop your professional kind of competencies, working at best-in-class organizations. And working kind of independently and as a consultant, you don't have those. You don't have the structure and you don't have the inbuilt organizational knowledge. So you have to really seek out the knowledge. On the other hand, you don't really have the resources. So you have to make your own resources and you have to find your own knowledge to do anything. Okay. So that's really, if I had to think about it, those are the big differences in my mind. So now I have to learn how to do things. It's not handed to me on a platter. You have to seek out the best practices and the tools and the other things. So you can really expand your horizon that way.
Yep.
The other kind of thing that I've discovered is that risk, like career risk or other things, is sort of, it's perceived. Like when you're at a big company, you think, I have a definite path and I'm going to go down this path and get promoted or go work over here, things like that. And it's kind of risk-free, but it's not. I mean, we've seen
Not
that
really.
And on the flip side, being independent, people perceive that as very risky. But if you have something you can do that you can get paid for, it's really not like you're much more resilient to a lot of circumstances. So a lot of the risk of going out on your own, I think, is just perceived in a matter of what do you want to do with it.
Yeah, and I think too, it's not capped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a salary inside an operation, yeah, you may be able to get promoted. You may get a kind of a yearly raise, but there's a little bit of a cap on that. I mean, there's a little bit of a ceiling. But if you are your own business, there's no real cap on that. Yeah, there's no safety net either, right? There's a downside.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're your own safety net. And so if you believe in yourself and the product you sell and the services you provide, then there's no cap, right? I mean, it's like sales, you can go out and you can sell 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, whatever. All right. So I think maybe you just have to figure out
it's $10 million are locked inside your key, inside your laptop, and you just have to figure out the keystrokes to get it out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I don't think that you'll ever be offered inside of an FC. You're always as good as your next shift. And at any moment, the tides can turn, leadership can change, things can happen. And if you haven't networked, if you haven't branched out, if you haven't looked at other things, you could be left holding the bag there. And so that's why, for me personally, I always kind of counsel people and mentor people that, hey, in this industry, you have to work for it. You have to push outside of your comfort zone. You got to meet people. You got to do things. You got to experiment. And the more you do that, the easier it becomes. And then you may find either A, it leads to a follow-on career like what you're doing with a consulting firm, or at B, at a minimum, it gives me other options that I can kind of turn to in case something goes sour at, at where I'm at right now, or my opinion of it might change. Right, my personality might change, or my wants or likes might change, and so I think, you know, I think that's a great message, and you're a great example of somebody that, yeah, I worked inside the four walls of facilities, and now I do this. You know, I mean, and other people can do that too. So it's not going to be handed to you, but it's certainly an option.
You can figure it out. You're a great example of that yourself, Ben. I mean, look at what you're doing. You know, you've got multiple, you know, a lot of great experiences and background. You're trying to, and you're out on your own doing things. Like, that's inspirational.
Yeah.
That's great.
I tell people this all the time. I'm like, just send it, you know, like just send it. But it's that first initial step that is the most difficult one. But then once you start to do that, it starts to become like a drug. You know, you get addicted to it a little bit. You're like, oh my gosh, you know, I went out on my own and I did this and it worked.
Like, what happened? Like, this is great.
Yeah, it worked. It's great. And then I'm like, I want more of that. I want more of that. And then before long, you're like, I feel confident enough to launch my own consulting firm.
And there's a ton of people, like you mentioned LinkedIn, there's a ton of people out there going the independent route, and maybe they're all taking like the same LinkedIn marketing course. I don't know, but there's a lot of folks out there who have like niche capabilities in very specific things they worked on in supply chain. And now they've branched out and they said, I can bring that to people as myself. You know, I can bring, you know, floor operational excellence, like how to run the shift and how to manage staffing plans to people who need it. And I can do the data analysis. I can do the supply chain analysis. I can do other elements of purchasing excellence or things like that, you know, procurements and so on. And it's really inspirational to see a lot of these people out there making the go.
I know.
So super cool.
I know. Yeah, no, I love it. And I think in this industry now, there's way more cross-pollination and turnover in people's careers and everything than what there used to be maybe 20 years ago. So I think that's an awesome thing. So good to see that.
Yep. Sorry, just had a sorry about
that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry for being
You're okay.
Bring him on the show. You put him on the camera.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. So where can people find out more about you, Paul? I know we already mentioned that they should be following you on LinkedIn. If you're in warehousing industry, you should follow Paul on LinkedIn. You know, my stuff is out there and it's funny and the whole thing, but Paul has got some very, very valuable things. So other than LinkedIn, like where can people find you and PL Programs, and what do you got on the docket? What's on the horizon for 2025 and beyond?
Sure. So what's coming up and where to go? I think LinkedIn's a place if you want to read periodic things. I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, you know, with other related items. And then up in Indiana, Crossroads of America, around Indianapolis. Those are probably like the main points. And I'm always happy like going just direct to email. You know, I guess the website is warehouseimprovement.com, which is a great domain for this. But, you know, contact information, email via the website is good. And that's where you can get a hold of me. And I'm happy to chat with folks who are interested. What's coming up this year? Well, we've got a large site that we're working on that's going live in a couple of years. Another automated site with a bunch of AGVs. So that's exciting. We're in some really planning and design phases with that, which is really neat. We're wrapping up a couple other automation projects. And then one of my senior consultant, Nick, is working on some infrastructure projects with the client. So we're going to continue working through those. And then we hope to expand some service offerings with some more implementations and working with some smaller companies that we've been talking to about some site moves and some site upgrades. So
awesome.
That's exciting. Like more projects. I haven't cracked business development yet, which is fine, but the work is exciting, and we've got some interesting items on the horizon.
Cool. Well, that sounds great, man. I love Indiana, by the way. Been there. Never met anyone from Indiana that I didn't like.
Yep.
So,
thank you so much. You know, having moved here a few years ago, 2019. Yeah, I agree. It's a good state, underrated, and more people should come here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Paul, man, thank you very much for connecting with me and coming on the podcast and everything. I think was very insightful. I think people will get a lot from this, and just a lot from following you. And hopefully, if they have some big projects on the future, man, PL Programs is for them. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
And Ben, right back at you. Thanks so much for the invite and the opportunity. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Paul. I'll see you. See you around. See you on the LinkedIn streets, as they say.
All right. Bye.
Take care, my friend. All right, guys, that concludes today's show. Thank you very much again for Paul for coming on. I mean what I say. You should follow him on LinkedIn. If you are not, do that today. You'll be happy that you did. As the Warehouse Underground goes, a couple of things. As always, please sign up for the community. Inside the community is tons of great content, message boards, networking. We have some live events, hopefully in the future, that we're trying to put together. Lots of cool things in there for members. Check out the next podcast next week, and check out the Tiger Team. So we launched a new show. We released episode 2. I don't want to call it unprofessional, but there's some comedy and some wit and humor in the Tiger Team. If you're out there working in FCs, I think that you will really like it. Please check that out with my co-host, Jordan. All right. So with that, guys, I will see you next week at the next show, and take care. Bye-bye.